25 years ago, 29 people were killed in the Omagh bombing carried out by dissident Republicans. In February of this year, we were reminded that the police service of Northern Ireland still faces mortal danger when gunmen ambushed senior detective John Caldwell as he loaded the boot of his car after coaching a youth football team. He was shot several times and narrowly survived the murder attempt. Even a quarter of a century after the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, police officers in Northern Ireland often conceal their occupation for fear of being targeted by Republican terrorists. But now, shockingly, the PSNI itself has revealed the names of every officer in its ranks, including ones working with the intelligence services. To explain more, I'm joined by a member of the Northern Ireland Policing Board and former leader of the Ulster Unionist Party, Mike Nesbitt. Mike, welcome to GB News. Thank you for joining us. I mean, you must be in deep shock about this and very concerned about the consequences.
Yes, Michael, I'm in deep shock, but much more importantly, so is the policing community. I think they're stunned and they're angry about this leak because, as you say, the big threat is dissident Republican terrorists and the attempted murder of Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell back in February was a real visceral reminder of the threat and of the fact that during our conflict, over 300 police officers were murdered, and not just on duty. Let's remember that they were killed in their kitchens, making their morning cup of tea. They were killed sitting in supermarket car parks, at sporting and cultural events, and just having a pint with their mates in their local. So that kind of 24/7 fear of terrorist attack remains real because there are a small number of people that we know as dissident Republican terrorists who believe that it is legitimate to murder to pursue their aims.
Tell me, you're on the police board. What role does that give you at present? What is there that you can do? What questions will you be asking?
Well, the questions that we asked when we met the Chief Constable and senior colleagues on Thursday of this week began with the kind of who, what, when, where and why of this catastrophic data breach. And we were shocked to discover it wasn't down to one individual or a single police department. There were multiple opportunities for different people at different ranks and levels to spot that the data sheet that was going to be uploaded had a facility where, with just one click of your computer mouse, you could get behind the screen, what was on your computer screen, and access the source data, which included, of course, surnames of every single police officer and staff member, their initial, their rank, and the location of where they were working. And the problem with this, Michael, is that we know if you're a dissident Republican or you're a person out to do damage, leads you into the area of jigsaw identity. In other words, you've got a lot of data from one data set. You then look to another data set to try and expand your knowledge. And the obvious one is, unfortunately, the electoral roll, which has just been updated. And one officer from the Catholic nationalist community made clear on Friday that he's leaving the country, not just leaving the police, because he's very afraid that because he has an unusual surname, that jigsaw identity is going to come to pass very easily for anybody who's out to harm him.
You put your finger on what must be one of the greatest fears, which is that the success that the police service in Northern Ireland has had in recruiting officers from the nationalist community in recent years will be reversed, because so many of those officers think, and possibly quite correctly, that they are now in mortal danger.
Yes, and the Chief Constable made clear to us on Thursday that they were aware that dissident Republicans are claiming, and I stress claiming to have access to at least some of that data. Now, I don't want to underplay the threat, but it is, of course, a fact that they would say that, wouldn't they? Because it is very much in their interest to maximise panic, fear and anxiety within the policing community and indeed society more generally. And indeed, there's a logic that would say, if you do have access to the data, why make that public? Because you don't want the police being any more cautious than they will be at the moment. Although I think given the panic that is running through the police family at the moment, I can't imagine anybody can be more cautious than they're being at the moment, because the threat must be considered to be very real.
And you, as a member of the police board, how do you satisfy yourself now that every possible assistance is being given to all of the officers, perhaps one should say particularly from the nationalist community?
Well, I have to say that was my main concern on Thursday, Michael. I was, of course, concerned to know and understand how it happened, and perhaps more particularly what measures were being put in place to ensure that it cannot happen again. But I was more concerned about the fallout, and I think the fallout is particularly severe in terms of the safety and security of the 10,000 people, both officers and police staff, whose names are on that list. And the open question is, does the PSNI, does any force in the United Kingdom have the resource and the capability to conduct 10,000 individual risk assessments in a timely manner? And the police's response was that they are going to have to prioritise how they deal with these risk assessments. They're going to triage, as they put it. So, for example, if you do have an unusual surname, then you are perhaps more at risk than others. Clearly, the risk to the nationalist and Republican and Catholic officers is higher because, once again, it's in the interests of dissident Republicans that people from the nationalist community have absolutely nothing to do with the PSNI. So this is an opportunity to try and put people off joining the force, to try and encourage them to leave the force, because retention is going to be a big issue as well as recruitment.
Yeah, it's it's a very, very grave moment. Mike Nesbitt, I thank you very much for joining us on a Sunday morning.